Every 37 seconds, someone is arrested for possession of marijuana. Since 2010, state and local police have arrested an estimated 7.3 million Americans for violating marijuana laws, over half of all drug arrests. Black people are 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana laws than white people. States waste $3.7 billion enforcing marijuana laws every year. Most of the people police are arresting aren't dealers, but rather people with small amounts of pot, just like me. I'm Gary Chambers, and I'm running for the U.S. Senate, and I approve this message.
And we definitely approve that message.
We definitely approve that message, and we're live. Hello!
Hello!
Welcome.
Uh-oh, Jen messed up.
I messed up. Okay, sorry, guys. Welcome, Wednesday Night Generational Change.
Is 70 the new 20, by the way?
I don't know.
That was the question in the ad, so I can't really
So anyway, I'm Jen.
I'm Peter.
And we have a good show. So for anybody who did see that, if you don't know, this is a gentleman that is running for U.S. Senate in Louisiana. And he did basically, I feel like he stole my thunder because like that was really my like.
Well, you can incorporate that if you run against.
Well, no. But that was my original sort of brainchild when we ran the first time was that is something that I should do. And we were kind of like,
Yeah, I don't know how well that would go over with the old biddies.
Well, I know, but it also depends on like what you're trying to do with your message. And also just as a matter of getting a nice viral moment for something that is legitimate anyway.
Yes.
So that's why, win or not, we didn't win anyway. So the point is, could have done that. But anyway,
he didn't win his first race. He ran for Congress.
Right.
Did pretty well. Came up short. But now he's running for the U.S. Senate against John Kennedy. Yes, the guy's name is John Kennedy.
Hilarious.
I got to tell you, you take one look at that John Kennedy guy and contrast it with somebody like Mr. Chambers. I mean,
Yeah. So anyway, we need to get him on our show.
Yeah.
That's the main thing is we need to get him on our show. We will persevere. I'm hoping to get him on for 420, just as a matter of principle. I think it would be we are going to plan a little bit of a virtual soiree for 420, if you will. Yes.
You know what I like? I like the fact that we're not going to get too much into it now, but we've obviously been paying close attention to what Marianne Williamson has been doing. And one of the things that she mentioned the other day, which I thought was so true, is this idea of, and even Nina Turner used to say, you're always in the struggle. It's not like there's going to be this aha moment where, yes, it happened, and now we can celebrate. No, it's going to be just this continually pushing until eventually you knock them over. That's kind of how I think we see this kind of unfolding. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it's going to break. It's going to reach a tipping point. But even more so is eventually the people that sort of make up the technical Congressional Progressive Caucus, eventually it will be actual progressive people. It's just a matter of getting to that point when it has enough power to flip. Because right now, the people that are really in it for the right reasons are like you can count on one hand.
Yeah. Really,
that are willing to fight. And so even so that's really, I just think it has to get to the tipping point. That's my gut.
Well, listen, he made a great ad, and Mr. Chambers.
Oh, and you know what? And it went viral.
And
good for him. And you know what? I do not support the idea of one issue voting, and I have no doubt that he is on par with a lot of issues. Like I didn't look it up. I just think kudos to him for doing that. But yeah, that would make me vote for him. Yeah.
I mean, it's not hard to vote for somebody that is non-corporate, but you add in the whole concept of what he's trying to do. That's like really annoying. Any way to like stretch that out? Or
I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. You're gonna have to just cope.
I'm gonna
You're gonna cope.
Isn't that like
look at it like another brick in the wall, man?
We don't need no. That's a great song, by the way. And I always thought that was Alice Cooper who did that song. I always did think that.
And see, this is something for which I will have to take issue with your parents. Like that is completely an unacceptable thing to not know.
Well, my mother.
That's a big deal.
My mother was definitely more 60s flower.
It doesn't matter.
type
It doesn't
person.
matter. You
Pop
need to
is
know
more rock and
that's
roll.
Pink Floyd, another brick in the wall. Like
Well, no, I
that's
know it's Pink Floyd. I'm just saying that
just saying that's
I thought it sounds like Alice Cooper, but it isn't Alice Cooper. It's a great epic song that just tells a great story. That's why, who were the two guys that you wanted to get on the show?
Andy and Alex, they
Andy
stood
and
me
Alex.
up.
Yeah, they probably just don't want anything to do with politics.
They stood me up.
Well, maybe we can rectify that, Andy and Alex, if you're seeing the stream. You never know what might happen. But again, we've got a wonderful show this evening. And I think it's very appropriate. Jen, if you want to show me how to do this properly in terms of the... Oh, wait, no, I figured it out. Okay, here we go. So we really have to address... We haven't had a bootlicker of the week in quite some time, but we're going to have one tonight. And I think you guys are probably not going to be surprised as to who it is. Paul Begala is our bootlicker of the week.
And what a bootlicker he is.
Now, what could we say about Mr. Begala? Well, the first thing you can say is that he was the chief strategist of the Clinton campaign.
That's all one needs to know.
So when we think about the triangulation of politics, I'm not really sure where the whole let's crap on our voters as part of the process. But if there's one thing we can say about the GOP, they never crap on their own voters. Ever.
No. So here's the
Ever.
thing. So what you're saying is, in theory, this is the person behind the deplorables comment that didn't go over so well and hasn't even learned from that. Like, this is somebody who's in that vein.
And he did it in such a deadpan kind of way.
It's not
Like-
the leaders. They have bad followers. Here's a newsflash, Paul. You're not leaders. You're representatives. And we're not followers. We're constituents or employers.
The worst part about
Followers.
Mr. Begala is that he is the swamp in every sense of the word. He's a James Carville. He's another one of those guys.
Old school.
Like these are
total.
just these politicos that roam DC that get paid a lot of money to offer their really crappy opinions. And it's basically just they're the foot soldiers for the party establishment.
Let me ask you, if they got statistics, if consultants had statistics like coaches do, would these people still have jobs?
No, because they're
that's what I
perennial
find
losers.
so interesting. Right. That's what I find so interesting.
And what exactly did Begala and Carville and guys like that do to help Clinton become president? They turned away from unions and they embraced Wall Street banks. Wow, that's so difficult. I mean, I couldn't imagine that you would actually win something if you just took all the money and basically built it up. I keep saying that it's not a big club. It's a small club and you're not invited.
I don't want to go. See, that's the best part of it for me.
Yeah.
I don't want to be invited. You know what I was invited to? You told me about it this morning. I was very excited about this.
Yeah.
So the Northwestern University Dem Club sent me an invitation to be their speaker this quarter. And it could be in person or it could be virtual. You know what? I thought it was when you first told me this. I'm like, it's got to be a troll because they're just being so like. First of all, they're like offering to pay for me to do this, which is amazing. Like,
yeah, it said honorarium.
It's crazy. Like this.
What?
Normally, we have to beg and plead for people to let us talk. Like the idea of somebody paying me to talk about what we want to talk about.
But you did go to Northwestern.
I am an alum, but the reason I don't think of myself that way is because it was grad school, not undergrad, and I just think we have more of an alum allegiance to an undergrad. I guess. Like I don't know. But I did go there. I have a master's from there.
Yeah, you have to take credit where credit's due. And like I said, I got the email. I looked at it. I was like, "Oh, you're gonna like this one. This is gonna make you laugh." And sure enough, we did get it. And obviously, I think it would be a great opportunity to speak at the university, just for the sake of being able to speak at the university.
Yeah.
And that's where the value of the non-corporate movement can really come into play, because people like Paul Begala, they get paid a lot of money to speak at random events. And, it's sort of like, there's got to be like a playbook to how the career arc happens for people like Begala, where basically you work on a number of campaigns, you ultimately strike gold if you happen to be on the right one that's on the winning side. You get on the board of some nonprofit organization. You get a book deal.
Lobbyist.
You become a lobbyist.
Yeah, it's a revolving door. It's the seventh circle of hell. They just keep walking around it.
Absolutely, and he, but he really, it went full mask off with the statement of, we just have bad followers. What you're basically saying is, you're not loyal subjects. You're not
in line.
Get in line and bow and bend your knee. And that's basically what they want. And it was a mask off moment, because it's never supposed to be that way. They're supposed to be a little bit more subtle about it, but we're never going to accuse these individuals of really knowing what they're doing, because as it turns out, there is nothing to it. And Begala, who is a frequent guest on shows like Bill Maher, he's so smug. He's so smug. He's always got that shitty
But that's
grin.
why I'm saying, what's his win-loss ratio? Like, I'm really curious. Like, this is the kind of stuff we should talk about. That, like, that's interesting to me. Like, why are people so interested in someone's opinion who has a losing record? Wouldn't you want to have the opinion of people with the winning record?
Well, I got to tell you, Begala's record has got to be one of what ultimately happened under the Clinton presidency. Well, let's see. You had NAFTA, you had normal trade relations with China, you had the crime bill, you had the 96 Telecom Act, you had the repeal of Glass-Steagall. So I don't know. That sounds like a lot of really crappy stuff that doesn't exactly help people. It actually hurts them quite a bit.
Hillary 24.
They're going to try to make that happen, aren't they? They really are.
Like, it's a farce of itself. Like, she is a farce of herself. Like, I don't understand how anybody can take her seriously anymore. She is literally like the cartoon character, like clinging on, saying, "But what about me?" Like, she's ridiculous.
Well, she just can't let go. And there are a lot of people who simply can't let go. And she's convinced in her mind that it is her rite of passage to be the first woman president, which ironically could be very interesting. I think the appearances of Marianne Williamson has really struck quite a chord with the progressive movement so far. I don't know if she's going to run or not.
I texted her and asked. I didn't get it. I didn't get a response.
Well,
I mean, I got a response, but I didn't get an answer to the question.
How much better do you think she would do this time around if she were to run?
Okay, this is what I said to her, because I said to her that if she decides that that's something she wants to do, that I would totally be behind that and support that and do whatever I can to facilitate that. And I also said that the idea of somebody continuing the movement of what we're doing is progress, win or lose, which is something that we talk about. It's a matter of keeping people interested, keep engaging more people, and building a movement. And when you go into hibernation every 4 years, it makes it hard to ever get anything done.
I agree.
So,
and that is notorious on the political
left.
Yeah. Oh,
Horrible.
Right.
And for anybody who is, displeased with the idea of somebody challenging an incumbent.
Did you see how Joe Biden conducted himself today?
It's called a democracy.
It's a democracy.
It's a democracy. And we already have so many restrictions and limitations as it is. Like the fact that Marianne would even really have to run as a Dem when we all know that we'd rather not, but yet that's what we're forced to do. So like, we're already so constrained, but the idea of her using her platform and spreading a message. And I say the same thing with Bernie, even though he was cheated and we don't have Bernie, the movement and progress was made.
I also think that Marianne would be willing to go further than Bernie did. And the reason I'm saying that is, number one, Marianne is very much like Trump in the sense that she is a true outsider.
Yeah.
She's not part of the DC elected class.
No.
And that is a much different animal when somebody doesn't have to worry about, well, am I going to rub this person the wrong way?
Marianne doesn't care about political favors.
No, definitely not. And I can also see a case where she could not only be running for president, but she would have like an army of candidates running behind her in all different places all throughout the country.
In a Bernie-ish way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And probably encouraged to do so.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing about Marianne. And this was the other thing about Andrew Yang. And it isn't that they both endorsed me. I mean, that's cool, but that's not what it is.
It is.
It is cool, but that's not what it is. What it is, and even if they didn't, and I say this about people in other professions, these are people that pull up other people with them.
Yes.
I say this about people like Mike Figueredo, Humanist Report. There are certain people that go out of their way to bring up other people in power, like give them share their power, share their privilege. And so Marianne is one of those kinds of people. And I think that you're right. I think there could be a movement of people that get behind that. And this has nothing to do with whether or not it's feasible or whether or not it would win or whether it's completely aside from that.
No, I definitely agree. And I think that Marianne has to know going in that it is a massive long shot. However, that doesn't mean that she couldn't garner an immense amount of momentum, because we're talking about this a year out from when things would actually take off.
But see, what about, let's say Marianne runs and there's a whole bunch of candidates that she inspires that are running in that same
non-corporate,
of course.
Candidates.
Right. Candidates that Marianne would endorse, kind of candidates, right? So let's say there's a whole bunch of those candidates, and let's say Marianne loses, but let's say a bunch of those candidates get through. And we're talking even at local levels, at any level. So
we need a lot more of that.
Right. So if her running inspires other people to do so, that's progress. Like that's, I really would like people to stop looking at every campaign as that the win or lose is the be all end all, because that's just not how this works if you don't let it work that way.
Remember, it's a lot different than just being a high paid consultant working on a campaign and losing.
Right. We can do better.
But speaking of candidates, and we have a wonderful candidate who is joining us this evening. She is a former Slate Mate of Brand New Congress with Jen in 2020.
But we never met.
And now you are.
I would definitely remember her. Look how cute she is.
And
I honestly, when I saw her picture, I was thinking of like Raymond Adderley, you know, the kid who's
super daper.
Right, but the fact that he's not even 18 yet, and that he's running for school board, but he'll be 18 by the time of the election, because she looks really, really young to me. So I might have to card her. We'll see.
Well, I'm sure she'll appreciate all that charming conversation. She is running for the 7th district of Georgia's state Senate. This is going to be one of, I believe, the 2 or 3 center stage states in the midterm elections.
Go Georgia.
We know that Georgia's on everybody's mind.
Oh, you had to do that, didn't you?
I played it off nicely, didn't I?
Do that.
I played it off nicely. I did. Nabilah Islam, welcome to Generational Change.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me today.
Hi, absolutely. You do look really, really young. I mean, I know you just do. I mean, I'm sure that you're old enough to run. I'm sure of that, but you really do.
Yeah, and I'm 32, by the way. I'll be 33.
Oh, wow. You look great. That's a genetic thing. That's a skin thing. Does your mom look young?
Yes, she does. She looks very
young.
young.
See, this is a genetic thing. It is, which doesn't to say that you don't take care of yourself as well, but there's genetics. I'm just saying. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I am now in week, crossing 2 weeks now that I've been campaigning for Georgia's State Senate District 7. So, you know,
where is that? What's the area? Give us the idea of that demographic, geographic and demographic.
So Georgia's 7th district is northeast of Atlanta. It's in Gwinnett County, which is the 4th most diverse county in the entire country. And it's in the suburbs. So it's, the average age here is around 34, lots of families. It's demographically, it's 65% Black and brown. The largest minority group is AAPI. So it's a very diverse district, lots of great public schools. So I'm really excited to run for state Senate and represent the folks here.
And who's there now? This is where you really know all the ins and outs of that. Like I always want to look at it from who do they have now, and not just what are you bringing that's different, because that's probably going to be obvious, but where is the support of that person? Like what's the level of support for that person? If,
Sure.
When it's not an open seat, this isn't an open seat, right?
So it is an open seat.
Okay.
And this is where it gets a little fun, so after the Republicans redistricted everything and moved everything around, no one knew what district they were going to end up with, because we knew that they were going to screw the Democrats. But I woke up the next day and I realized that I was living in an open seat that no one was representing. What happened was they packed this district to be very blue, and they kind of made the other districts around it more Republican. And the woman that did represent it was my state senator, Dr. Michelle Au. She was the first Asian woman to get elected to the state Senate in over 200 years. And they drew her out of this district into a more heavily Republican state Senate seat, where she then decided either she was going to, run for re-election for state Senate, but now she decided to run for state House because her state House representative is retiring. So it's been a lot of moving around. And so that I have an open seat. It is a competitive primary. So I do have a opponent. She's a state rep. And it looks like it's just going to be a 2-person race between me and her. And also, I think I mentioned this before, but this is a safe blue seat. So whoever wins the election on May 24th is the, presumed senator-elect for the district, because this district will go to a Democrat in November.
We're speaking with Nabilah Islam. She is candidate for Georgia's 7th district in the state Senate. What would you say are some of the lessons that, a lot of times when people end up running for office, there is a huge difference between that first campaign and every campaign that follows thereafter. So what would you say were some of those lessons that you learned running for Congress that you now feel will serve you well running for the state Senate?
I would say, not everyone wins on their first try. And you learn more from your losses than you do your wins. That's for sure. So, I think I learned that it's very important, and I couldn't really do this because of COVID, but it's very important to have that hands-on approach and be in front of people as much as you can. Make sure you knock on doors, because that's the number one way to be effective in getting out your message. As we saw, we didn't knock on doors for health reasons because we were in the middle of a pandemic, but Republicans continued to knock on doors. And sure enough, we saw all over the map that Democrats lost everywhere. So I think, and then in the runoff, we made sure to knock on doors to elect Warnock and Ossoff. So that's something that we're going to make sure that we do safely, of course. Also, I think it's really important to, for me, I remember when I first ran, I was a little shy about the fact that I didn't have health care at the time because I couldn't afford it, or that I put my college loans into forbearance. And because I wanted to seem like I was this well put together candidate, which I am, but it was kind of it was hard to talk about my vulnerabilities. But I remember once I did, that's when people started to connect with my message because they felt like they could relate to me. So one thing that I've made sure to do this time around is just to lean into who I am and my identity and my strengths and my weaknesses, and just be vulnerable, because I think people really appreciate that, and they really appreciate a candidate that's a real person.
Oh, they definitely do.
1,000%. Obviously, this is going to be, as we mentioned, as soon as you came on, Georgia is going to be one of the center stage states this year, along with Pennsylvania and maybe one other. Obviously, the potential rematch of Governor Kemp and Stacey Abrams looms large. Obviously, there's a wrinkle here because, I really don't like that Brian Kemp guy. I totally like Mr. Perdue. And of course,
but we have to do a shout out to Michael Owens.
Yes.
If we're talking Georgia.
Well, no, but on the GOP side, it's going to be very interesting because they're having a primary, and that's not something that I think anybody more or less anticipated. And then on the Democratic side, obviously, it's not just Stacey Abrams. It's also Senator Warnock, who is running for re-election right now. And our friend of the show, Michael Owens, is running for Secretary of State. So it seems like there's
very pleasing.
This very big coalition potentially could be working in concert to continue the trend of a more progressive future in Georgia. Have you had communication with some of the other candidates? And is that more or less the consensus that you see? Because even though it looks like it's certainly going to be a red wave year, Georgia could potentially buck the trend. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think Georgia will buck the trend like we did last time. This is a state that's really energized, organized. Anyways.
Yeah.
And we're really on the ball here about making sure we're reaching out to voters, registering voters. There's a lot of energy here, and we also have a large. For example, my parents came to this country in the 70s and 80s, but now it's my generation coming to age. We're now voting, we're organizing. And so I feel like, I'm hoping to see, I think that we will have a Democratic governor, Stacey Abrams, come this November. And then I'm hopeful to see that we flip some of these down ballot races. Secretary of State, that's an exciting one.
And no one thinks about it. It's a very unsexy kind of, sort of like Commissioner of Agriculture. It's nobody really thinks about it and realizes how important it is.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, like it's important because what if we get like what his name is? He's a congressman. He's running for Secretary of State on the Republican side. Jody Heiss. He's insane. Okay, so think of like if it comes to the point where Georgia's again super close in a presidential election, we could have a Secretary of State that goes the other way and says, oh well, all these ballots are fraud, and like try to flip the state for like Donald Trump if he runs for president again, which maybe he will. But like
it's going to happen.
Yeah, we saw a very similar situation here with a friend of ours, Sheila Sherfalos. I said it right.
Sherfalos
McCormick, who just won the open seat in Florida's 20th congressional district. And the gentleman that she ran against, who was the Libertarian Republican who ran, he lost by 59 points and is claiming voter fraud. So it's like,
he hasn't conceded.
He hasn't conceded.
He lost by 59 points, and he won't concede.
And I keep saying that the more that the issues of the past, whether it was what happened in the primary with Bernie in 2016, whether it was what happened in the general election last year, the more people lose faith in our institute of elections. People get away with that. Yeah, it's a big problem, and that's why we really have to nip it in the bud quick.
Well, it's not going to happen with this voter protection law. So.
No, but Georgia is definitely going to be a very interesting state this year. And like I said,
Georgia's interesting every year. Georgia's just interesting. By the way, everybody who comes on here as a candidate from Georgia officially gets a little peach above their head. I cannot contain myself with that. I'm sorry.
You got the peach design.
We're the middle of the political universe, so.
I've had very interesting experiences in Georgia across the board. I mean, I grew up in South Florida, so really to get anywhere, I've always had to drive through Georgia. So I've spent enough time like going through there, and some of it has been not so good, and some of it was really good. So it's a mixed bag. And also, you're really young, and I was there in, oh my God, Jason and I were driving through, and it had to be 93.
So this is when the state flag still had the big Confederate flag ablaze.
It was in 93. Yeah. And we stopped in Macon. I was too tired. I'm like, we're not going to make it to Atlanta. I need to just stop. So we stopped in Macon, and we went to, I forget what it was, but there was a Days Inn or a Best Western, but it was like a chain. It wasn't like a mom and pa. It was a chain. And my husband ran in to see if there was a room, and he came out and he looked so freaked out. I'm like, what happened? He's like, yeah, we can't stay here. The lady at the front was just bragging to me that they don't let Black people stay here. And he was, and this is a guy from Southern California. So like the South is, he was freaking out. So we ended up getting the honeymoon suite at the Travel Lodge that had a heart-shaped bathtub, which was hilarious. But that was one of my experiences in Georgia, in Macon. And this was in 93. And it really was very like, I mean, I really thought at that point, that it was a little freaky.
Well, that's where I think a lot of people don't really understand what it means to be in the Deep South, and how the prejudice and the dividing lines are very, very real.
Some of it's very.
So what would you say, obviously, if this, like I said, this could be a huge, huge year in terms of where the state ultimately goes. What are some of the things that you would see a blue legislature in Georgia do that is perhaps long overdue, that hasn't been done under the GOP over the past several decades?
Making sure people have health care. We need to expand Medicaid. That is definitely long overdue. And we're one of like 14 states that have yet to do that. So that's one of my number one priorities on my platform, is pushing for Medicaid expansion. Also making sure that we have voting rights, because they have severely gutted our rights here and made it more difficult for people to vote via absentee, in person, or even trying to drop your ballot off, which they're trying to get rid of completely. And then also our schools have been underfunded for 20 years, but it's estimated at $1 billion at the. So making sure that we have proper.
Where are you ranked with education? Because Florida's 48.
Oh, Georgia, I think Florida's okay. So I thought we were 48. So we might be 47. So.
Well, Georgia's not as rich of a state as Florida. Like, if you look at the states that are the richest states, and then you look at the states with the worst education, with the exception of Florida, there is somewhat of a correlation between like New York and California are not at the bottom of the list. And yet Florida is all the way at the bottom of the list, and we're very wealthy.
I don't know.
That's disgusting to me. That's
Atlanta Metro is like becoming the largest metro area in the whole country. So, it is the state is definitely changing quite a bit, and it's the New York of the South. Was that a fair way of assessing what it is?
I would say Atlanta. So Atlanta is our little blue sea plus the metro area with Gwinnett and Cobb, all these metro counties flipping as well. It's a little different than other parts of Georgia. We're becoming increasingly very diverse. We have a very strong. We have a very large Black population here as well. Lots of our elected officials are diversifying. I think that we're the largest city in the Southeast, so definitely. I don't know, New York of the South. Maybe we could call it that. Sure.
It's certainly becoming a destination.
Oh yeah, no, and Atlanta is definitely not short on the traffic situation either. If anybody knows traffic, it's people in Atlanta.
Well, we have LA and Atlanta compete to be number one.
It's bad. I've been in Atlanta traffic.
That's not something to brag about.
No, it's not a good thing. It's not. That's
But that's why we're huge advocates for high-speed rail.
Wow.
And I think that would certainly make a huge difference. In terms of our carbon footprint, in terms of economics, there's so many benefits to, that type of thing.
I will say that unlike New York, we don't have mass transit in the way that they do. So that's something that I'm also pushing for on my platform is expanding transit, because there are some strong NIMBY vibes of not in my backyard.
Of course.
So we're pushing against that, but I feel like we'll soon be successful in expanding transit.
Well, the most important thing, as we like to obviously talk about on our show, is that regardless of what you're running for, what party you're running in, as long as you are not taking corporate special interest money to get elected to office, we believe that corporate special interest money is the issue of our time. That is what divides us more than anything else. We see it every day. And obviously, you are fighting the good fight, especially on the progressive side. Nabilah, how can people find you? How can they get involved in your campaign?
Your information up.
Yes. So my website is my name. So it's NabilahIslam.com. You can sign up to volunteer.
Nice.
Yeah, I know.
Nice. Mine was stolen from me.
No way. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Mine was stolen, permanently stolen by Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Oh my God.
Wouldn't expect anything less.
It's like Ursula taking away her voice. Like Debbie took away my name.
No. Well, maybe you can buy it back from her. I don't know how much it.
It was like something like $20,000 was what this person was. No, my husband just looked into it just for curiosity's sake. But so guys, show Nabilah some love. Nabilah or Nabila?
Nabila with an
Nabila. Thank you. I was right.
I was wrong because, of course, I can't pronounce anything.
With names, usually that's the case. So, guys, show Nabilah some love. Definitely sign up, get her social media, like, and do all that, because just spreading the word is really helpful, even if you can't contribute.
Nabilah, when is the primary?
May 24th. So in 4 months.
All right, guys.
So we will definitely look to do a Georgia panel before the primary. We'd love to have you. We'd love to have obviously Michael Owens back.
Yeah, we'll get on anybody who's running that is non-corporate can come on. And we need to do Texas really soon too. Those are the
friendly reminder.
Yes, friendly reminder. Thank you, Nabilah. It was nice to meet you.
Absolutely, Nabilah. Thank you so much. Best of luck, and we will be seeing you later in the spring.
Sounds good. Take care, guys.
Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
She was lovely.
Yeah, I know. That's your new phrase now for everybody who comes on the show. But she is. Lovely. And obviously, like I said.
But she really is. I'm sorry, but she kind of looks like a Disney princess to me.
What, Frozen? Is that what?
No, just in general. She looks like she could be a Disney princess. She's just like, she's adorable.
Well, I definitely think that it's important that we have these conversations, regardless, like I said, of where the political lean is. We have a new friend in the comment section who clearly is on the more conservative side, Casual Goats. That's okay. No.
Except they are in this country, but I don't know that it's always like that everywhere. And I have a feeling we could do it better. We can't even get the regular rail to run from West Palm Beach to Orlando here. So we could
do it better in this country if we spent $1 trillion on infrastructure and didn't waste it on corporate giveaways, about $700 billion, and another $300 billion is going to Mr. Pete Mr. Mayor Pete to decide what to
Mayo.
do with that money,
But
and
it's
we all
like-
know why he's getting
We're
it.
sitting here asking for light rail. We don't have regular rail yet. Like people do not understand the gravity of the situation here in South Florida.
Well, we don't want to keep our audience waiting because we know more
No.
people are going to want to jump on. This is a conversation we've both been looking forward to having. It's very important, especially with all the suppression that goes on YouTube, on any type of independent media in general, that we continue to form relationships with anybody who is a content creator who understands the importance of not falling into the trap of the corporate special interest control, which is what we've been fighting back against for so very long. So we're definitely going to have a very fun segment now. You know him from Stuck in the Middle, the podcast that is up and coming. His name is Osiris, and he is coming to Generational Change. Welcome, sir.
What is up? Thanks for having me.
Hi. So I really didn't know of you until I saw this on our calendar. So then I looked it up, and of course I subscribed because you got to, spread the love. But so it's really nice to meet you.
Thanks a lot. I've been following you for quite a bit. I forgot how I found out about you. I don't know if it was Yang. I found out about you before you did Tim Pool about a year ago.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that was a great
fun.
episode. Mhm.
Yeah. You weren't one of the people calling me Karen, right?
Oh, no. Oh, gosh, no.
Okay.
Oh,
No, I was laughing about that because I got like 1,000 or something Karens in the comments on the Tim Pool show. It was like we could have counted Karens.
The
We could
truth
have,
of
like, a drinking game.
the truth of the matter is, a lot of people did like Jen on Tim's show, but of course the issue at bar was the fact that she voted for Biden, and that became could not get past it. And
no matter how much I explained it, it was well reasoned, it was well thought. Like
I could tell people also that this is Trump's state.
I wasn't
this is a
bragging.
red state.
I
This
wasn't
is a state.
suggesting people vote for Trump or
Trump
vote
won
for
this.
Biden.
There were people who were literally losing their minds about what she was going to do, and were you going to promote? I'm like, this state went to Trump by 500,000 votes. So I really don't know what this virtue signal is supposed to mean, because it isn't actually changing anything. And that, I think, is one of those political nuances that I'm sure you have observed, is this hyper-partisanship, this idea of you are not even allowed to talk or acknowledge somebody on the other side.
You do realize he's stuck in the middle as the point of the fact that we're being brainwashed by competing dogmas that are both extreme and wrong.
Osiris, how do you see
Yeah.
it? Because to us, we think that obviously corporate special interests running our government is the issue of our time, but there definitely is this concerted effort of divide and conquer. Don't know where it comes from, but it certainly seems to be the order of the day. You see it all day, all day long.
Why
on
can't
social
we all
media.
get along, Osiris?
Why can't we?
Well, we are being manipulated, in my opinion. We just had, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and my dream is for the populist left and the right to get together and run the world.
Yes.
And I think all of this division is to prevent that from happening. So it is difficult, because when you look at the populist right now, the figurehead is Trump. So the fact that you got from the Tim Pool show is they felt you sided with the corporate Joe Biden.
Yes.
Instead of the populist right. So it's a very difficult thing. There's a lot of things that are stopping it, race being one of the big, wokeism being another one. But my dream would be to get people together on both sides.
Yeah. I was very specific about my thing for Biden, and it was not an easy decision. I'm not proud of it, but I still maintain that 100 and something thousand DACA people were able to rest easier. And to me, that was a tangible. And I could at least say, okay, that's a tangible. And I know someone who was deported and how terrifying that is. So I thought, okay, that's one thing that I know. And that did happen. The DACA kids weren't terrified of being deported anymore. And so that is a positive. And I don't understand how people can't see that reason. It's not like it's just, tribal or random. It isn't that, and people are very tribal. And that's the biggest problem we have. I agree completely that it's a populist thing. And I always said this. I said, you can see that it's a populist time. And if nobody steps up on the left, they're going to go with the populist on the right. Like it wasn't that complicated to see, and we're still seeing it. And I mean, do you notice that more and more people are getting it?
I think more and more people are waking up to it. What I want to see now happen is, because I think there has been a true grassroots, whether people agree with it or not, populist movement on the right that has infiltrated the Republican Party. And they are controlling things, this America First type vibe. I want to see that on the left. So you showed the ad of, was it Gary Chambers, that epic ad that went by? So I don't know much about him, but can we see people that, considering he's a populist left, can we see people like that infiltrate? Because I used to be an AOC fan. I thought AOC was great at first, and I think she's a fake populist now. So is there any real populist on the left? Let me ask you that. Is there any real populist left in the Democrat Party right now?
Well, okay. Do you mean in terms of what they would like, what they believe, what they want, or what they're somewhat having to do to play a game? Because there are people that I do believe, like I know Cori Bush. Okay. Like there are people that I do believe that are fighting as much as they can for their people as best as they can and putting it all out there. But if you were just going to take sound bites here and there, I don't know. I think everybody isn't going to look great once they're playing in the system, because the system is just so inherently filthy at this point that even the people that really are populist and really do want those things, that's the game that they're playing. You understand what I'm saying? So I think there are people that want those things.
I actually want to,
and I don't know whether Alex is one of those or not. I have no idea. The truth is that I never thought, I'm not saying that in regards to that. I'm just saying there are some that I know of. Ilhan Omar, like to me, she's the thing.
Anybody who can, the amount of
death
hatred that she has to deal with on a daily basis, got to tip your hat.
And
because
honestly,
she's still willing to take it is amazing.
If you have any interest, her autobiography, she had a book out. Read it. Like this woman is in it for all the right reasons, has no hidden agenda, she is all about justice and what's right, like completely. No agenda. So do you consider that somebody?
If I may, she's the one congressperson who actually stood up and said, "Free Julian Assange." Like there was no qualms about it. She put it out there. She didn't dance around it and say that he's a bad guy.
She's not going to be bullied, and she's not scared.
Yeah.
So what do you think about those two people, for example?
It's really up to you and your perspective. I really like Katie Porter too.
Yes.
But here's what I would like. The problem I have with Ilhan and someone on the right like Marjorie Taylor Greene is how do we get them working together instead of actually they're fighting. They don't work together at all. That's the problem that I'm having. So you say Ilhan is so great, Cori Bush is so great, and this is not blaming them or, this is both sides have to figure it out. How do we get them in a room and say, we want you all to run things. We don't want Schumer. We don't want Biden. We don't want Pelosi. We want you all to run things, but you're fighting and you're not doing it. Is that even possible?
Well, I do with some people that are on that right. Marjorie Taylor Greene is not the best example because she's just so in it for the limelight and so incendiary and so.
You can make the same case for AOC.
Well, and I didn't mention AOC. Yeah. I didn't mention AOC. I don't have a position on that. But like in terms of how Marjorie Taylor Greene has spoken of Ilhan Omar, it's really that's not somebody you can work with when they're using you for a punchline.
Or when Marjorie made that stunt with Marie Newman with the flag.
Yeah. Like when you're purposely going out of your way to attack your colleagues. And I want anybody to think about this in terms of any other workplace you've been in. If you would be purposefully going out of your way to spew hateful stuff to your colleagues regarding not anything you're working on right now, Like not even regarding policy, not regarding your job, but just how easy would it be for them to work with you? So I am not one that ever says, oh, it's the right. I see it on both. I mean, I am not a fan of the Dems, but when you're talking about these people working together, it is definitely not, from what I've seen, it is not the left that is being hostile in that regard from the people that are the populist people.
Yeah. So when people ask me about, well, when do you think things will change? And I am optimistic, but I don't think common people are going to win, if you want to phrase it like that, until we see a bridge between, I don't know how it happens, between that populist right figure and those populist left figures.
Yeah.
Until we see that bridge between, and I don't know if it's the supporters that do it or how it happens, but until then, the corporates are always going to win.
Yeah. You know what the answer is? You know what the bridge is? It's labor.
No, what's that?
Labor.
Well, I think
labor is the bridge. Yeah. And
yeah,
we talked about that a lot, because you'll see it in unions all the time. Their politics is not relevant when it's like you've got both groups in there, and yet they can accomplish amazing things. So we always talk about that. We do believe that is a huge link. And it's exactly what you're saying. It is. It's the link between the right and left populist. The answer is labor.
Yeah. It's, you listen to Steve Bannon, and a lot of the stuff that he talks about, it sounds similar to Bernie from 2016. You'd be shocked. So I agree. Labor, as far as taxing the rich, trying to reform. Steve Bannon talks about that as well. I think it's finding the common ground. We have much more common ground than we don't, and that's where I think we'll start to see a change.
What I hope becomes more of the norm as we go forward is more and more people get fed up with the theatrics. It seems that politics is it's like pro wrestling, as Jen likes to say, because it's just about, who can you dunk on today? And, not to belabor the point, but, there was an incident, and listen, there's nobody who is considered more disliked on Capitol Hill than Ted Cruz, but
for good reason.
There was an incident a number of months ago, as you probably remember, where I don't remember exactly, and they say you always remember how a person makes you feel. There was a particular piece of legislation that Ted reached out to AOC about and said, hey, I think we might be able to find some common ground on this. Yep. And AOC told him to stick it. And it's like,
okay, see, I didn't know that. I don't agree with that.
Like,
that's a
not
problem.
Good.
No.
I mean,
no.
When Bernie can find common ground with Cruz and with Mike Lee and with Rand Paul on the issues of war, that's very important.
Bernie always does, though. Actually, he's someone who's always been really good at both the left and the right populists, and kind of he's been a good bridge for that. And granted, he's an independent, so it kind of makes sense. But even if he were a Dem, I just think that's how he rolls.
But I think that's a perfect segue into talking about the power of the corporate media, because what they do is the second that there's like a piece of legislation that could really help people, where somebody like Ted Cruz, of all people, would reach out to AOC and say, hey, let's make this happen. Or in the case of Bernie, where he does make it happen, it's like they get attacked for even looking at the other side. And I'm thinking this is as big of the reason why we're divided, is because they play referee in the worst possible way. They're a crooked referee, I guess you can say.
That's disappointing.
I described it as we are the adults and they are the kids, and we're rewarding bad behavior. I talked about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene raised, what did she raise? Like over 3.2 million in like her first 3 months.
I'm sure
she had.
It's like she gets clicks. She gets the political equivalent of clicks, so she's going to keep doing it.
Yeah, and I'm not against her, but she's getting rewarded for not working with the other side. So why is she ever going to work with the other side? All she's going to do is try to play games, do her ads where she's shooting her guns and all that kind of stuff. And we give her money, people in Georgia and elsewhere. And the same thing happens with AOC. And she gets all this money for her campaign, and she doesn't have to work with anybody. They don't have to pass any type of legislation. So I think we have to start rewarding the behavior we want to see.
Yeah, it's sticks and carrots, and we really suck at it.
Yeah.
I do think that the Dems are particularly bad at that. They just really do not understand how these. They just really cannot get out of their own way. I'm
yeah, but
sorry.
I don't
It's like they
agree. I
kinda-
actually think they deliberately don't know how to get out of their own way.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of like
no,
you saw what former Clinton top strategist Paul Begala said about how it's not our leaders, it's our followers.
Our
It's like,
followers.
oh my
I saw
God.
that.
Like how many,
That was
but, you know,
hilarious.
they
I
should just
know.
keep saying, like, just keep pulling the mask off, man. And just keep
Mask
pulling it off,
off.
because more and more people are going to look at it and be like, all right, I don't want
I
this
find it
anymore.
hilarious. It's like we're not followers; we're your
But-
employers. And the
But
fact
you
that
see
don't
how.
understand- Go
Yeah,
ahead.
but you see that came from the establishment left. Like he was the strategist for Clinton, right?
Oh yeah.
He's just embedded in the establishment, and that's why I don't think the left doesn't. The populist left doesn't have the full control of that party, because you couldn't do that on the right. You would get flamed. He would have been flamed and done. He would
Yeah.
not be able to go on Fox or anything like that. If you heard anybody on the right say it's not your leader's fault, it's your fault. So that's what I want to see from the left, is more control over these corporate narratives. He said it so casually too.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, you're our disciples. You'll do as we say. You'll get in line, drink the
Mhm.
Kool-Aid. Like they really have no concept of what they're doing in terms of, or they have no plan, because they don't want one. They just want to keep like suckling off the teat. Like
But-
they don't want to have a plan. They don't want a platform. They love to play defense. It makes it look like they can blame all the Republicans. They can blame Joe Manchin. They can blame whoever they want, and they don't have to have a plan for
But I'm
anything.
seeing a lot of cracks in the armor. I think a lot of people, it's sort of like this 5-year odyssey, as I like to say. It's the Bernie Trump phenomenon that has resulted in millions and millions of people that have woken up into this political arena. They had to kind of take their lumps and get used to how things are done. But now we're kind of entering this phase of, I see what you're doing, you. I know what you're up to, and your game ain't fooling me anymore. And I feel like we're entering that phase where a lot of people are dejected in a way because they think things can't change. I'm of the mind that I actually think we're closer to major change than maybe ever before. What do you think about that?
I think we're at a turning point. That's for sure. I don't know if the turning point is necessarily Republican and Democrat though anymore. It's like we were talking about what he said. It's more, do you believe that these politicians work for you? Or do you believe that you follow them like servants? That's really the difference in ideology now, more than Democrat or Republican or anything like that. And right now, I think you're right. I don't think people have the appetite. Right now is not the time for do as you're told type stuff. So I agree.
Yeah, people are sick and tired of it, and people are getting more and more desperate. And you see it. I mean, we see it all the time. It's going to get worse.
From a
Especially.
No, go for it.
Oh no, I was gonna say, especially when you don't deliver. Like, how are you arrogant when you have not delivered on anything? You promised to cancel student loans, you didn't do that. I mean, it's these very simple minimum wage, these simple things that you promised. People can argue whether they're positive or not, but you promised that you're going to get them done, and they're not. They didn't even come close to happening.
Right. To me, when I look at Biden, regardless of what's going on in Congress, like we could take that whole thing off the table and not even address that right now. But every single thing that he has within his power to do via executive order that he has not done that would improve the lives of people is a failure on his part. Period. I don't care about any of this nonsense going on with Congress and the legislation. Like that's just theater. But if he really, and I do believe that if he really wanted those pieces of legislation, they'd pass, because the president of the United States has that kind of power. And it's funny, we put so much like awe and authority into them, but yet then we accept that people like the parliamentarian and or Joe Manchin is holding up the entire country. No, president can do what he wants to do with that,
But
in one way or another.
Yeah, and the second that you start making excuses like it's the parliamentarian,
Oh,
that's where
any of that
even the
nonsense, I
most,
can't.
even the most like true bluer is going to be like, I don't know about that. I think you
Right.
may be trying to pull one over on
That's what I'm
me.
saying. Take Congress off the table and not even look at that. Everything he has failed to do by executive order that's within his power to do so is a failure. To me, it's infuriating. You could cancel student debt. You could decriminalize marijuana, declassify it as a class 1 drug. Like, there's so many things. You could pardon all nonviolent drug offenders. There are so many things that you could be doing, and he does nothing.
Osiris, would you say it's fair that overwhelmingly, I mean, look, I can't even imagine how many people truly voted for Biden that wanted to vote for Biden.
Exactly.
Like, this was a complete repudiation, more so just because of I mean, listen, Trump was going to win in a landslide if it wasn't for COVID, but just the way that he handled it in such a callous and indifferent way was Biden didn't have to do anything. He just had to stand there, basically. And I think we're in a situation now where a lot of people are looking at this and thinking, I never want to be in this situation again where I have to vote for somebody that I have zero interest in.
And I won't do it again, by the way. I put that out there under no circumstance.
Jen, I am 100% with you. I am not voting for anyone that I cannot get 100% behind. I said right now, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's one of the best podcasters, really smart libertarian. Comic Dave Smith is who, if I had to vote for president, check out his channel if you get a chance. I would vote for him because liberty is a big issue with me right now with some of the things going on. But the point is, you're right. I don't. People don't want to get into this. I'm voting for the lesser of two evils. Have you heard people talking about Hillary trying to run again, potentially? You've got to be crazy.
You know what? I almost want to see that as you want to see a train wreck. You know it's bad. People will die, but yet part of you wants to just see it happen. That's how I would think of it, because there's no way she can win.
And it's also this whole industrial media complex where they don't give a damn about whether Hillary can win or lose. It's about, can I figure out a way to make another killing over the next 6 to 12 months,
and get a book deal and get more speaking engagement. It's just it's just like the gravy train. It's just the money train.
It's the swamp.
She has to stay relevant. I
is,
cannot stand that.
I
am saying it now. I will vote for Trump over Hillary. Not only will I abstain, I will vote for Trump over Hillary Clinton.
I don't know. Did you see Kim Iverson the other day?
No. What did she say?
Kim Iverson came out and I'm just going to paraphrase. She came out on Twitter and was like, she's going to vote Republican down the line. She's done with Democrats right now.
Yeah, look, I feel her frustration. I mean, for me, I don't make blanket statements like that just because we have on good candidates. I know there's good people. But I am claiming it now that I won't vote any other. I will vote. I am voting for Trump.
Neoliberalism has to die.
I cannot with that woman.
Because we're seeing that what history has always shown, that by having the opportunity to help people and not helping them when they are desperate for help are going to turn them in one of two ways. They're either going to go the FDR way or they're going to go the Hitler way. So you have to decide which way desperate people are going to go. This is true throughout history. And the more that they try to play into these little niche areas of why we're divided, why we don't get along, we are heading down a very dangerous path if we don't recognize that this has to end. Like this whole idea of, we talked recently about the fact that the Democratic Party was the party of labor. It was the party of Jimmy Hoffa. Because of the Clintons, they became the party of Wall Street and forgot the labor movement. There is no denying that. The biggest problem on the Republican side is that they were always the party of libertarianism and management. They got in bed, particularly over the course of Reagan, with the evangelical right. And now you have somebody like Mike Pence, who is a heartbeat away from becoming the president.
And that is not good.
No. Yeah. Mike Pence has no chance, though, now. But I hear what you're saying, though, exactly with what happened there throughout the years. But I think Mike Pence, he fell out because the right is pretty much done with those corporatists. So you guys know more, I think, about the midterms and how it's shaping up. I'm still looking at it, but can Democrats make a statement as well? Is
No.
it possible to?
No, they're going to get annihilated, with the exception of, like we were just talking about, little pockets. Like there's Georgia, there might be some good progress there.
Look, you know what? It's
going to be ugly.
In Pennsylvania, we think, John Fetterman is the, what I would call the populist candidate that would have a real opportunity to bridge that divide. And he is from Pennsylvania, as they like to say. He's really from that part of the state, the working class Dutch of the state.
And it's red populist.
But the Democratic establishment is getting behind this candidate. Two candidates. So getting behind, obviously, Conor Lamb, who's the ultimate corporatist in the Pittsburgh area. And then you have this guy, Malcolm Kenyatta, who's running in Philadelphia, who is a fake populist who you could just go back. That's the great thing about the internet. It always has your history of what you say. And the way that this guy just completely crapped on Bernie and everything that he stood for. And now you want to pretend like this guy's really fighting on your behalf. When the spotlight's not on you, that's when you really know what a person's thinking. When the spotlight comes to you, then you pretend like you're something that you're not. And so from my perspective, I think you're absolutely correct that there has to be, and we always say progressives and libertarians have a lot more in common than they don't. And pretending like we can't find that bridge is a complete non-starter.
You know what?
Us.
And if nothing else, we all hate the liberals.
Yeah, that's
right.
Like
we all hate the people in the middle because they're not doing anything. Like I look at it as like it's a circle, not really a spectrum, because there's certain things like we talk about this. The only two non-corporate senators are Bernie Sanders and Rand Paul. And so, like, I look at, and I'm not a Rand Paul fan by any means, but I respect that he's actually representing who he says he's representing, because we don't have any evidence that he's representing corporate interests. So that makes him more respectable to me. I have a lot in common with him, especially on foreign policy. There's a lot of things. Civil liberties is a big thing too. And I wanted to talk to you about that because, as you know, with this pandemic, when there comes crisis, that's when the powers that be like to take away our rights. And nobody pays attention because everybody is so scared and they're worried about their safety. And so they're willing to concede their liberty and to have their safety. And I see that. I remember it after 9/11. I don't know how old you are and like where you were politically when that happened, but I read the Patriot Act. I actually read it. Most people in Congress that signed it didn't read it. And yet they signed it. And nobody still even really talks about that we gave up our 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights. Obama extended it. We still haven't gotten them back, by the way. And we just go on like business as usual and no one talks about it. And that's very frustrating to me. And I see more of an encroachment at every opportunity. COVID's no exception. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not a, whatever. But when we start talking about things like mandates and things like anything that I feel is controlling people's civil liberties that it's not something that's in the best interest of everybody, is an invasion of my civil liberties. If these vaccines were sterility vaccines like smallpox and such, and they absolutely stop the spread of the virus, then you would have somewhat of an argument that your existence, it affects other people and you've got it, we got it, and get it. But it doesn't, people. It's like a flu shot. Accept that. And so forcing that, it freaks me out about civil liberties. So, and this is where I really do feel like a libertarian, where I'm just like, let COVID thin the herd, people. Let it thin the herd. Does it ever occur to anybody that that's what it's supposed to do? I mean, is that like a horrible thing to say? You know what I mean? That's my libertarian in me. It is. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah. If you ever run again, they're going to nail you.
I don't care. I believe in natural selection. And if a virus doesn't qualify as natural selection, then I don't know what does.
I got into a conversation with my father not too long ago because his girlfriend has a pre-existing condition that could definitely harm her. And their attitude was, well, everyone needs to be vaccinated because it'll stop the spread. I said, listen, you should absolutely get vaccinated, especially if your health is called into question. But it is not a vaccine. It is a booster shot, and it does not stop the spread. No. Can it somewhat slow the spread? That remains to be seen. But all things indicate that this is a way to take care of your own personal health. We cannot survive as a nation if we think that any form of totalitarianism can be
No bueno.
acceptable. It cannot be. And that is what happens in China, to a lesser extent in Russia. And if we are to distinguish ourselves from the other two global superpowers, because let's face it, it's us and them, that's the whole world. And we basically have proxies all over the place. If we're going to distinguish ourselves in any way, we cannot be a country that gives up liberty for security. It's not possible. And that, I think, is the distinction that I think a lot of progressives share, but I think they're afraid to share because of how powerful the corporate liberal narrative is. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there are a lot of progressives, well, that I follow that are able to speak and articulate just like you both did. That is right up the wheelhouse of my channel. And it is my number one concern. I can't even, I used to talk about Medicare for all. I can't even talk about it anymore until we get this foundation of our liberties underhand and out of the way of the government mandating and now doing vaccine passports and all this other stuff. I can't talk about other things until we get the fundamentals down. And that's the Constitution. And I think that is the unifying factor that we're seeing here between my channel and yours right now. Is the unifying defining document is the Constitution. And I think hypothetically, you talk about treatments for a disease. I don't want to get the channel in trouble. You say hypothetically, I trust people to make the decision. If the government works on a medication, if the medication is good for the people will use it. You won't need to force anybody. Like
right.
if you have zombies running around outside, nobody's going to go outside. You don't need the government to tell you to stay inside. It's just common sense. So I trust people to make the right decisions. And I'm fine with the government recommendations, guidelines, all that. But when you start saying you have to do this and it's against the Constitution, I call it an attack on Western culture. What we're seeing, you might have heard this phrase a lot, give up your liberties for the greater good of society.
Right.
That is a collective mindset state that is against Western culture. And I don't know if it's a conspiracy or what, but the bottom line is it's an attack on Western society.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, when it comes to we have schools obviously require vaccinations. Schools require, measles, mumps, polio, whatever it is. And I don't have a problem with that. And I don't have a problem with that because those are all sterility vaccines. And so we know they work and we know they keep everything away, and you can waiver out. You can waiver out for different reasons. It's not like an absolute thing. And also we're talking about children that are under the age of 18. And it's kind of like, we're allowed to sort of do that to you. We just are. I'm a parent, so that's just the way it works. But as long as people have the option to opt out and, whatever, then I'm fine with it. For ones that are sterility, and it does matter. It makes a huge difference.
And it takes
but here's the other, and here's the other part of that is those were all passed via legislation. Every state passed those via laws. Right now, to my knowledge, no state has passed one law on the pandemic. It's all been
That's a really
mayoral.
Good point.
It's all been mayoral and gubernatorial edicts, emergency orders, and we're going on 2 years now. So we've completely lost representation in this country, and that's not a right thing, left thing. That's just a thing that we have to get back into control.
When the affluent white suburbanite housewives,
I hate that. I'm not a housewife.
Get upset and get uncomfortable, there is hell to pay. And this is where a lot of it stems from. There is shame culture. There is this sense of I'm better than you and I know what's good for you. And I am going to make your life a living hell because I have all the time in the world because of how comfortable I am to basically see to it that that is the case. I have always maintained, and I will always say this, and I know there are not a lot of people who want to hear it, but the most dangerous racist in society is not the Confederate flag waving Looney Tune who
It's
shows
me.
up. It is.
That's what he's going to say.
It is the suburbanite housewife who lives comfortably in a gated community.
Not gated anymore.
Like the lady who was in Central Park, if you remember. The black gentleman who was
the
filming
bird watcher.
her,
He was a bird watcher.
abusing her dog.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, that person is emblematic of the problem, because that's the person
Karen.
who will say, you better be vaccinated. Otherwise, you're never going to eat in this restaurant. You're never going to be accepted in this town. We mentioned on our last podcast how right after Trump won, you had 1 million of them plus with their pink hats on marching on the Capitol. For what? Because they were upset?
Their feelings were hurt.
What if you marched for Medicare for all or a Green New Deal? What if you actually marched for something that could help people?
Where are you now that we need to get the voting rights thing? I mean, like any of it, but no, a pink vagina hat, that'll do it. You know, we could just all do that. Yeah.
And that is that liberal culture that we talk about.
I'm not those people, though.
But the problem is that is what lives around our country's political epicenters. That is what lives around Washington, D.C., and that is what lives around New York City.
And that is who votes.
And that is who votes.
Yep.
That's a big part of it. These are people, like we said, they want to, every policy that we have been put in, that I've seen put in place since COVID, has been based on one of two things: fear or profit, or both. But none of it has been out of reason or science. It's all been out of like fear mongering and profit. And the only policy that makes any sense is masks. Masks actually do stop the spread of different sickness, which is why there were much less flus this year, because people were wearing masks. Like, that's actually based in science. I can get behind that as a request. It's nice. I never will support mandates or bans. I just don't do it.
So,
it's just not something I am ever going to get behind, whether it's assault weapons. And this pisses off the people on the left, because I do not support assault weapons bans. Just banning and mandating is never going to be the answer.
They don't understand. Maybe some of them are starting to get it, but once you start giving up just a shred of it, they'll take all of it if they can get it.
Let's get 4, 5, and 6 back, people. They were nice. It was nice
Yeah.
to have them, right?
From your perspective, and this is something that I'm sure you address as you see fit. But the use of race today is done in a way where there are still problems. There is no question about it. There is systemic racism, which we talk about, especially when it comes to a block. I'm forgetting the specific.
When it
term.
comes to economics, housing, justice, the environment, and basically voting,
criminal
everything.
justice,
there is a deep problem, but the problem is that's not what gets addressed. What gets addressed is
it's being used as a weapon.
Symbolic. Yeah.
Yes. And like people that just calling out people as racist, that they're the problem. This person's a problem. Their platform's a problem. No, the problem is the tax code is racist. The problem is the criminal justice systems. Like, it's so much. It makes them feel better because they feel like they're doing something about it by calling someone out or canceling them, but they're not really doing anything about it because the issues have to be handled at a much deeper level. That's my problem. What would
you see as being some concrete solutions that could alleviate the problems without listening to the crap that corporate media throws at? If you don't agree with this particular type of voting legislation, you're a racist. It's like, where do we get? From your perspective, where do we get to a more positive footing to solving what is still a major problem in our country?
I think there's a lack of trust, and we can't get to the heart of racial issues when we have this lack of trust. I would actually recommend not bringing it up. And the reason why I say that is because it is used as a weapon so often. Even when you don't want to use it as a weapon, I think many people kind of cringe, like, oh, as soon as you start saying race, oh, I don't know if I want to get involved with that. And it really, class is a bigger issue to me when you look at it. And that's a a more of a unifying issue is working on class. And I think that's part of the problem Bernie had. Bernie was more based on class-based stuff more than race, because Bernie had problems, in different demographics with race.
Yes.
And I think I think his approach was actually the right approach, but people usually bring up race as a weapon, and he did not. So then, for whatever reason, he lost favor with people because of that. But I think that is the right approach, is not to bring up race to avoid that, because what we're seeing right now with critical theory is basically the
CRT.
weaponization. Yeah, CRT. And it's really funny because you never hear Nancy Pelosi called a white supremacist. It's your neighbor, or it's someone who did a microaggression. And it's just odd because it makes me wonder who's really controlling this race thing when you're really never looking at institutionalized power. So right now, I think you have to build trust, work more on class than race, in my opinion.
Right.
Couldn't have said it better, because we have a segment called the Kente Cloth Tales on our podcast.
The Kente Cloth Tales we have story time, and there's different books. So we have the Kente Cloth Tales, an anthology of tone deafness. There's a few. We have the Oligarch Chronicles. Like, we have a few really good story times here. But Nancy Pelosi is honestly, she's got to be next to Hillary as like the second most tone deaf person in like the history of the universe.
And a person who truly hates people that are not on her level.
Oh, she's the biggest elitist. Oh my gosh, she's so gross. Right?
Yeah.
Like, she's such an elitist.
But as we try to tell people, when you look at the Democratic Party as its current incarnation today, the two leaders, if you will, of the party, one resides in Silicon Valley and the other resides on Wall Street. So, if the leaders of your party are Pelosi and Schumer, and not just that, but the fact that all of the leadership in the Democratic Party, as of today, every person in a legitimate position of leadership, you want to make the argument for Hakeem Jeffries, yeah, he's just another corporate whore, if you will. But every person in a major position of leadership in the Democratic establishment is over the age of 80. They're over 80. Every one of them. Hoyer, Clyburn, Waters, Pelosi, Schumer, they're all over. Well, Schumer's not 80 yet. But anyone in the Democratic congressional delegation, they're all over 80 years old. And I'm just wondering how much longer people are going to be asleep at the wheel on this. But I do think we're getting a lot closer, as you said, to where this is a class war, because that's what it is. It's a class war. Do racial issues play a role? Sure. Do sex issues play a role? Sure. But everything can be drawn in to the fact that we don't have a labor movement that has sustained itself over a long period of time, since probably the 60s. We do not have, we have right to work laws, like in Florida and other states, where you don't have collective bargaining.
Where are you, Osiris?
Colorado.
Oh, I went to see you. I'm an alum.
Oh, did you? Oh, nice, nice. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio originally, but nice.
Where
Beautiful.
are you in Colorado? Where are you?
North of Denver.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, it used to actually be rural there. Like, when I would drive from the Denver airport to Boulder back when I was in school, like, you would go through where you saw prairie dogs. Now it's just nonstop sprawl the whole way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But Boulder is beautiful. Beautiful city.
Yeah. So do you like it out there?
Oh, yeah. I actually like Jared Polis. There aren't too many Democratic governors that I give credit to. He's been pretty good. Now, he has had a Democratic state legislator, which really helps, just like DeSantis has Republican there, so they can just get legislation through like boom, boom, boom. But he's been pretty good as far as the pandemic. He's left it up to the counties to make their own decision, which I think is the right way to handle it. But he's been decent.
Yeah, that's actually a very local control thing to do for a Democrat, but Colorado has a history of fairly moderate Dems. I remember when I was in school there, I was campaigning at the time. It was Lamb was his name. I can't remember his first name. His last name was Lamb, and he was running for U.S. Senate. And he was I'm sure, just neoliberal corporatist Dem, but I was just campaigning because I was in college. So, but he was definitely moderate. It was not, and you also have more of that Western red. The red states that are Western are different than the red states that are Southern.
South.
There's a very different, especially when it comes to things like the environment, when it comes to there's just a very different vibe. It's a different kind of red. Just like, it's red, but it's kind of more of a libertarian red.
And it's always been.
Right? I mean, isn't that the case? Yeah.
It's always been territorial because everyone likes to say that, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party shifted. No, it's always been the way that it's been. It just so happens that there shifts in regions. The South is still the South, just like the West is the West. The Prairie region, Great Plains is the way that it is. The Upper Midwest is the way it is.
Are you going to do a geography lesson?
Well, we're doing it right now. But I think we are losing sight of the sense that we are the United States of America. And I'm not sure what's going to happen over the next few years, but I think that it's very important that we have these conversations, that we figure out a way to have, and it's not even decorum, because that's like a way of saying, well, we can't argue now, we can't do that. But having the conversations that are legitimately going to change the narrative, because that is what we're trying to do. We're transforming politics into service. We should do our change maker of the week with Osiris, because I think it's sort of pertinent. And so we're going to do this. And so our change maker of the week, people, Governor Phil Scott, Vermont's Republican governor. Mm-hmm. And yes, you can all say, but it's Vermont, and Vermont, yes, they're generally left or leaning. But this is the point, is that this gentleman just backed an all-male election bill. And he wants to be the first state to have that. And I just want to give props where props are due, point out that this is a Republican gentleman, and also that I had to put it just in case people didn't know. There is no known relation to Rick Voldemort Scott. I just wanted to put that out for you fellow Floridians. I don't think there's a relation. I looked, I couldn't find any. So that's why I say no known relation. But yeah, so props to Governor Phil Scott. And it seems, just based on statistical data that I've reviewed, it seems that the highest rated governors in the country are Republicans in blue states.
Interesting.
So when you think about Governor Scott in Vermont, you have Governor Hogan in Maryland, forgetting his name right now, the governor of Massachusetts. I think that there's probably sort of this progressive sort of libertarian mesh that occurs between.
It's populism.
Yeah, it is.
They're populists.
It is.
That's the point. So I thought you would appreciate this, because we're talking now about, it's not a left and right thing. It's a populist thing. And so obviously voting is a populist thing. It's not a left or right thing. Everybody should vote. That's the thing. So what do you think about this, that this is the, giving props, we're giving kudos to the Republican?
Yes, much respect. I think it's a bold thing for Republicans to do, because typically right now, the more, the easier you make voting, it usually doesn't help out Republicans. So that's why you see them try to restrict it. I don't think it's a race thing personally. I think it's just that's not going to help us win type of thing. So it's good to see him doing that. The one thing that I am big on, though, is voting integrity. And I think somehow we have to reform how we audit elections to streamline that process, to make sure that we restore confidence. We don't have people like you were talking about, some guy who lost by 59 points who didn't
59%, and he still hasn't conceded. He's claiming it was fixed.
Yeah, we need to see what I'm seeing in that is someone taking advantage of the lack of trust people have in the election process. So we've got to tie that up. Otherwise, we're going to see a lot of people try to do that. 59 points, still trying to play games with it. So good to see, though. Yeah, very good stuff.
Yeah. So, and you know, one of the things that is a problem, and while I do support the idea of states' rights, I'm a fan of local governance. I think that the way that every state's elections are so different, and that there's a profit motive. Again, these voting machines, whether it's Diebold or whatever the company is that makes the voting machines, there's a profit motive between whoever the Secretary of State is or the governor and whatever company they're using. And there is so much of an appearance of impropriety for me in the mechanism that overall I just has a bad taste. Like it needs to be something that can be universalized. And I do love the idea of doing mail-ins, everybody doing mail-ins. But then here we still have the problem of the machines count the ballots. It's not hand counted. So we have software here. And then even when there's a recount, they just run them through the same machines again. And that does not lead to confidence. We need hand counted paper ballots, and that there needs to be certain universal truths about what constitutes a fair election, even though I support states' rights. So there has to be some sort of balance with that. What do you think?
I agree. Federalizing election it terrifies me, though. It's very, very frightening because we've got establishment people in control. So I don't know if you've read some of the voting act from HR1, S1, the John Lewis Voting Act, all that.
Oh yeah.
That there's language in there that's very disturbing. Makes it harder for third party candidates.
Yeah, the poison pill parts of that legislation, for sure.
So I don't trust the federal government to run the voting at all. But I agree there should be a little bit more consistency is what I would like to see. But if you leave it up to the states, if you leave it up to the states, then I think I would have more trust in that process than the federal government right now.
Right. No, I don't think they should be controlling it, but I think there needs to be sort of bare minimum standards, sort of like we have it's funny. I got a job where I'm grading bar prep essays for people. And the one I just did was about the Miranda warnings. And so like, there are certain things that we can put into place that are basic standards that get applied by the states. So we could have something like, this is what constitutes a free and fair election according to our, Supreme Court. This is what is a free and fair election. And yeah, the states can decide within that what legislation looks like, but there has to be certain basic that would be part of our Constitution, if that was written out there, like just certain things. And the idea that there's a profit incentive in any way, shape, or form in a conflict of, as far as I'm concerned, is a conflict of interest with all of it. Like there needs to be certain rules about that. The governor and his friends should not be profiting off of any sort of voting mechanism or system. And that's my concern. And I think that's where regulation is needed, not necessarily in terms of the specifics of how everything works, but I think we need some standards.
I agree completely. But that's not the discussion that we're having. I don't hear that discussion at all being had.
I know. That's the problem.
My biggest issue. Yeah. Well, first of all, they're doing the whole voting rights thing because they're trying to cover their asses for the fact that they failed so miserably with Build Back Better, and that they allowed the infrastructure bill, which is a complete corporate giveaway. Let's be honest, it's what it is. And it's also supposed to be basically a pick-me-up from Mr. Pete, because we all know he's going to be the heir apparent.
He's the next one.
There's no universe where I'm voting for that man.
Well, that's what. Well, listen, and we'll get into Marianne Williamson and Nina Turner as sort of like the closing, figuring out what the left progressives may ultimately end up doing. But what always strikes me is that all of this started, this whole pulling the mask off and exposing just how bad things really are, when they literally stole the primary from Bernie in 2016. It was proven.
Yep.
There was no consequence. And of course, this is coming from myself personally, where I immediately got Bernie when he started running in the spring of 15. And there were things that I was seeing right off the bat where I knew they were going to steal this thing from me.
I liked Bernie in 98.
That's going way back. That's going back.
It's me for sure. I wrote a paper on the civil unions versus same-sex marriage, and Vermont and Hawaii at the time were the only two states that had it. So, and I knew about the Burlington mayor.
And I really appreciated what you wrote. I thought it was wonderful, and I appreciated every nice thing that you said about me, Jen. And wonderful things are going to happen in the future, and you might run for office again, and maybe I might support you. You never know. So what I thought was always so interesting is that we know that the primaries are rigged, and yet you want to talk about voting rights. You're not talking about primary voting rights. You're not making sure that everybody has an opportunity to have open primaries, ranked choice voting, or any of that stuff.
I have one word. Super delegate.
Super delegate.
Yes.
Super delegate. And and I've said this, the Democratic Party has no moral ground to stand on regarding voting rights. Sorry, none.
And like you said, we won't even say the word, but they use you know what as a weapon. They're not using it to actually help people.
No.
It is not in their financial interest to help people, to keep them on the hamster wheel.
Yep. I think they're worried they don't want to have what happened to the Republican Party on the left. They don't want a true populist uprising. And that's what the voting rights is about right now for them.
They're trying to get something through that really doesn't have any meaning, but it's a virtue signal. That's all they do. That's all they do is little bits and pieces of virtue signaling. And there are decent pieces of that legislation. It's not entirely bad.
Voting, listen, election day.
There are decent things.
Most
same-day registration is good.
Same-day registration is good. Yeah. Election day should be a federal holiday. There are, there should not, and again, we understand that you don't like gerrymandering, but that's because the GOP prioritizes local politics, and they have taken over 32 state houses throughout the country.
Yep.
And
they were smarter.
And you've only got 18 to show for it. That's because they prioritize what matters, and they want to not do gerrymandering. How's this? There is an organization called Ungerrymandered in Michigan, and it is a completely independent commission, and they have drawn the districts almost perfectly. Imagine that.
There was a rule
districts
back
perfectly
when I was
when there's an independent commission.
It should be, but I remember it used to be something about this concave rule. Or a convex rule. It was the convex rule that all districts should be perfectly convex. There shouldn't be cutouts or whatever. And I forget. I had some very nerdy friend in college that referred to it as that. But I don't know if that was ever a thing. But that's how you know. There has to be lines, and the lines have to be somewhere. And sometimes it might be, one county divided in half. Sometimes that's got to happen. But you at least got to do the best you can to keep communities together.
And for all the hand wringing that the Democrats do, probably the most egregious example is in Ohio. They completely gerrymandered the hell out of the state. They were trying to make it a 12-4 district, and the Supreme Court shot it down, say this is gerrymandering. You can't do this. But you don't hear anything on the left about, well, I guess the courts do work sometimes in our favor. It's what
does your district look like? I'm sorry. What does your district look like? Ours is insane.
I don't know off the top of my head. I've got to think about mine's not that bad. I was looking
ours
at
is
Dan
absurd. Ours is this most ridiculous. It has all of the wealthy Jews basically across southern Broward County and down to the beach in Miami Beach. Basically,
they basically divided amongst the black population has one district. The Jewish population has one district. The Cuban population has one district. This is not a mistake.
No.
This is not a mistake.
But because it keeps those certain people getting reelected because of tribalism. So that's the reason Debbie gets to sit where Debbie sits. If her district...
That's why Mario Diaz-Balart gets to sit where he
sits.
If
our district was a convex district, she would have been gone years ago. Long
time ago.
Yeah. So that, and we would also most likely be red. So that's, it's so interesting. And so they do that to keep themselves in power. She happens to be blue, and she's been she's not really. She's a Democrat in name only.
But the thing about Florida that is different than a lot of other states that are red is that Florida is a very libertarian red. It really values not just states' rights, but county rights. And that's one of the things where, DeSantis was trying to, I guess, on behalf of his wealthy constituents that live in places like Boca Raton, for example. They didn't want the mask mandates, but at the end of the day, because of the county power, counties like Palm Beach and Broward, which are blue, especially Broward, they got what they wanted, which is we're going to override the governor's mandate and say that we are having masks, and that's it. And they won. And from a local political perspective, that is a very big deal. And things are changing. The last thing I think we should touch on, Osiris.
I like that.
Which I think is probably more than anything.
Like we used to have for like Carvel in the stores, like you would have like it would be like the St. Patrick's Day coloring paper or whatever holiday it was, right? You know what I'm talking about. Or it would be like Easter Bunny. Like, we should have them draw our districts. Oh my God, that would be awesome. And they couldn't be any worse.
And one thing I want to mention, John Holder, former producer, friend of the show, appreciate you checking in. Yes, of course, Debbie would roll her eyes at Sheila when she's getting sworn in, because that's what she does. But ironically,
oh
I'm
wow,
for Del Holness probably to get him.
Yes, there's going to be another primary down here, Osiris. You're definitely going to want to keep an eye on this, because it's this is a part of the country where when Jen was running, there was a noted campaign worker, consultant, whatever you want to call him, who works campaigns at the federal and state level all throughout the country. And he specifically said to us, boy, you guys here in Broward, you are a whole different animal compared to other parts of the country. And I'm thinking, okay, so we're not crazy. We really are that corrupt.
It's bad.
We're that bad.
It's bad.
So the fact that Debbie was doing that, but her butt buddy, Mario Diaz-Balart, he actually made a very nice introduction for Sheila when she was sworn in today. So credit to him for at least being professional and accommodating, acknowledging, the fact that the first Haitian congressional representative in our country's history, and how, she is a non-corporate candidate, and he seemed very gleeful about it. Respect to him. But am I surprised? Am I surprised that Debbie Wasserman Schultz would roll her eyes at Sheila McCormick getting sworn in?
The biggest problem.
It isn't surprising at all.
She's really not nice.
No, she's not.
She
has that reputation.
And I'm not saying that as any sort of bitter ex-kid, nothing like that. She's been my rep for a long time. I've met her personally. We're only like a degree separated. In terms of like her kids play soccer, my friends' kids played soccer, and I've seen her at the supermarket. She's just, there's nothing warm and remotely endearing and human.
And
nothing.
it's
almost a little bit.
I have had countless people repeatedly say that there is a negative energy that surrounds her. To even be in her presence, it isn't good. But speaking of that whole negative energy, and this is really where I think it's best for us to close the conversation, there is a massive amount of nihilism in politics right now. This whole idea of let's just burn this to the ground. One of the reasons Jen and I had talked about that having this conversation was important is that you had put out a message recently about the importance of protecting the Constitution. Jen, as you always like to say.
Yeah, I don't have it here anymore because we moved. I used to have it next to me in the studio, but now the studio and my office are different things. And so it's not, I have my little Constitution. I've read it.
But it's
fascinating, people. You should check it out.
And it's very important that you know your rights. And then, of course, there is that contingent on the left. We know who they are, but they really don't like Jen. And they were suggesting that she's racist and the Constitution needs to be burnt to the ground. And I'm thinking, this is the part of that nihilism, especially on the left, that is very, very dangerous.
It's very unproductive.
It is.
It's very unproductive.
And you saw what they did to Nina Turner. They basically sabotaged the campaign. Yeah. And she came on our podcast recently and let it fly. God bless her, because I love when she does that, where she's like, you guys seriously need to F off. And it's like, what more do you want? It's at this point, I don't know what the end game is, but that nihilism that's out there is, and we know how frustrated people are right now, but thinking that burning it to the ground is the answer, it's not the
answer. What
do
you think? Like, how do you must feel that way too?
Yeah, it hurts my heart is how I would describe it. There's a lot of pain. I think there's a lot of pain from people, and basically, just to give some more context, there are people who actually said, I said, The Constitution is one of the only documents in the world worth fighting for. And there are people who actually think that's a racist ideology. And some people going back to the Constitution saying, hey, you're 3/5 of a person, and acting as if that hasn't been amended or changed. It's a lot of pain. I think that's where it comes from. And then there is the ideology that's very prominent right now to get revenge, so that you have control over the future of the country. I think their whole goal is to destroy the Constitution. So this ideology from people who believe that, they don't want the Constitution to exist at all.
Yeah.
Which is, if you're going to start from scratch, it's going to be very tough to come up with a document as good.
That's what I think. I think people, was it originally written with white supremacy and white male landowners and all there's some horrible stuff in there. But if you take the things that are our basic rights and you equally apply them to everyone, it's pretty stellar. You know, there's some good stuff in there, and
especially the Bill of Rights.
Yeah, well, when we're talking about this, that's primarily what we're talking about when people are talking about their rights. They're normally talking about the first 10 amendments. Most people don't understand how the Constitution is even written anyway, and they wouldn't even be able to tell you. But it is important because it's what we have. That's the menu. So considering that we all coexist and live here, that's the menu of any semblance of order that can keep people protected from people that aren't nice. So that's what we need to be like. Those are our rights that need to be protected. So it is weird to me that people would want to crap on that. I take it seriously. I love my little Constitution. This was the one joke. Okay, I have one Constitution joke. When I was in law school, people would always, like, when we were doing con law, be like, oh, I'm going to focus on this or I'm going to focus on that. And I would always joke that I'm going to be a Third Amendment specialist. And nobody would, like, it takes a real logic to understand
that's quartering.
It's the quartering of soldiers, right? Which is completely, but because you'd have all these Second Amendment enthusiasts, then you have like the, and everybody has their thing. And I'm like, I think the Third Amendment is very underrated, that we really need to bring back.
Well, look, if we're going to have a second civil war, you may need to quarter some soldiers.
Yes, sir.
We always joke that if there
Hopefully
actually
not.
was a civil war, it wouldn't last very long because one side overwhelmingly knows how to fight and the other side doesn't. And
all of the white elitist liberals that live in the cities don't know how to even change tires.
Well, you
guys are going down in the apocalypse.
Yeah, if the apocalypse is coming, the people who live in parts of the country like you live in, you guys are going to be fine because you know how to survive in nature. The people that are the loudest.
He's in the suburbs. He's not in nature.
He's not far from the mountains, though.
He's not. I'm talking about people like our friend Bo of the Fifth Column. If there's do you know Bo?
No.
No. Check out his show.
Yes.
You would very much appreciate him. It's Bo Beau, Bo of the Fifth Column, and he's I always say he's like my Mr. Rogers. He's always going to distinguish between legality and morality, and he's very much a populist message. He's not politically, like, he doesn't have any party affiliation, and he's very much about what's in the best interest of just people. Like just kind of helping people. And that to me is very important. But
I think what we could do in the future, because one thing we've talked about, know your farmers, Stephen. Absolutely. Very good point.
Yeah, those are the surviving people, man. The people that can live off grid, the people that actually, it's those Second Amendment people that most people are scared of. Those are the people that are going to survive the apocalypse. So whatever you want to say about them.
And again, John, of course, big money is what sabotaged Nina. It's what is the order of the day.
You know what, though, John? When you are a big platform and you go on a big platform, even bigger platform, and you're sitting there and telling people not to donate and not to help and talking people down from being supportive of Nina, that's sabotage. As somebody who knows what that's like happening to them, it's sabotage. Yeah. So yes, there was an inordinate amount of corporate money. But could that have been maybe counterbalanced better if she hadn't been getting it from the left as well? Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Osiris, we always tell the story very quickly. And I know a lot of people like, Jimmy Dore's attitude
Don't
about,
tell the Jimmy Dore story.
but I'm just saying
so
that
tired of the
there's,
Jimmy Dore story.
the reality is that he had an opportunity to very gently lend a hand with our campaign when he came down here at the end of 2019, did a comedy show, spent half of it talking about Wasserman Schultz. And all he had to do was just say that Jen Perlman in the audience running for Congress, of the 400 people that were there, especially because this was just a few minutes outside our district, I'd like to think we probably could have secured at least 20, 25 volunteers.
It's a form of sabotage, but it isn't just that. And I'm so tired of reading the story. And every time we tell, I just don't want to hear the comments on it. But we got ghosted by a lot of people that claim to be for the policies that we're for. It's very counterproductive when you do stuff like that. There's a whole slew of people that claim to be for the things that I'm for: Medicare for all, Green New Deal, ending wars. Like they claim to be for these things, but then they go out of their way to either talk crap about you or ghost you or whatever it is. That's a sabotage. Sorry, but it is.
And one final thought, you just jarred my mind. One final thought that I think is very important here. We talk about Medicare for all, and we're seeing right now, especially with everything that's going on in this moment, the power that Big Pharma has and the amount of power they would lose if we had a universal healthcare system that removed the for-profit middlemen in between us and our doctors. To me, that is a lot. That is, and we always say it is government funded, not government run healthcare that we are fighting for. And the more people understand that, the more that this whole progressive libertarian bind, if you will, I think is a really great way to bring people together. Because if there's one thing that libertarians agree on with progressives, let's stop wasting money. Let's stop throwing it at things that don't actually do anything of benefit and just perpetuate the corporate cronyism that dominates our country. If we had Medicare for all, we could crush the power of Big Pharma. I think that you would agree that that's something that could be a great benefit.
Oh, absolutely. Right now, I think that's even more pertinent with, like you said, with the pandemic and the power. Big Pharma's got power now that I didn't even know they could amass at this point. CEO of Pfizer admonishing the Supreme Court. We've seen some stuff that, wow. And they were talking about censorship too, and I would be 100% for that. Right now, my number one policy above it would be universal basic income, because I would like to see money and the power in the hands of people to make the choice where they want to spend it. But I think, especially as we get the gig economies bigger and bigger, a government funded healthcare is paramount. We have to have it.
Yeah, it keeps us behind every other country. When people want to think about, oh, we're this great country and have pride in this country and feel patriotic and all that stuff, it's hard to do that when I look at countries like in Scandinavia that just have it going on. Their people are happy. Yeah, they pay more in taxes, but their people are happier and they have better quality lives, and they get to take family leave and they get to enjoy. It's not all about like being a slave drone to capitalism, because there's certain oversights that allow it to be like you're free when you have choices. Freedom is not being stuck in a rut. You're not free if you don't have choices, and you can't have choices when you're just struggling to live. So, when you look at our country, everyone seems to be struggling to live. Yep. That's not a country that's winning. Yep. It's just not. So to me, when I look at countries where the people are, for the most part, able to have their vacation time, even working people, they have good jobs, they get healthcare, like all of these things, people in other countries enjoy their lives a whole lot more than we do here. In a lot of countries, even in places like the UK. They don't have to stress about, they're never worried about going bankrupt from somebody getting cancer in their family. These are things that reduce our quality of life. And I think that's a big problem. And I think that's part of our unhappiness and desperation and all of that stuff. And, we wouldn't have these problems if people weren't desperate and unhappy and not taken care of. It's not that complicated.
This pandemic has taught us anything. And we put this on social media all the time. Nothing would have mitigated the amount of deaths and despair that happened over the past 2 years than universal health care and universal basic income.
Paid family leave, like certain things, or even payroll subsidization, blah, blah, blah. But like what other countries did, where the government stepped in and said, okay, we're going to cover 80% of the payroll throughout this pandemic. They could have done an emergency order giving everybody Medicare for the duration of the pandemic. And of course, once they do that, they know you still could, Joe. But once they do that, they know they'll never be able to close that door again.
Correct.
But like there's so many things that could have been done differently. And I would argue if we had a better healthcare system in the first place and people could actually go to the doctor and take care of themselves, then you would have a lot less vulnerable people that are more susceptible.
Stop talking common sense.
Susceptible to having severity of the virus. Not that not everybody can get, I've had it, but like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No. So why aren't we hearing the populist members of the Democrat Party talk about this more, like Cory Bush and others? I don't hear them talking about this.
I got to tell you, the one person who is Marianne Williamson. And she's been on, she's been on a couple of shows lately, and it's almost like she's catching fire like quick. And I always thought that she was underestimated and underappreciated even in 20 when she ran. Obviously, she was running in the progressive lane, which was completely occupied by Bernie. But now this is an opportunity for somebody who, like Trump, is truly coming from the outside and is not going to kowtow to the establishment elected officials on Capitol Hill. And maybe, just maybe, she might be the one. I mean, you never know. I mean, I think I just think what has been said already, like even you alluded to watching one of her interviews. I saw a couple of them, and one in particular, friend of the show, personal friend, Jordan Cheriton. She was on Status Quo the other day, and she literally said, "Suck it up, Buttercup. We got a lot more fighting to do." And I'm like, that's what people on the left need to freaking hear already. Stop coddling and fight, because if you fight, you never know what might happen. That's what I think could be, and
not amongst ourselves.
No,
here's the thing: it's the people at the top versus the rest of us. That's the teams. And when people don't see that, it's incredibly frustrating. You know what I'm saying? Like
she said, it's the powerful versus the powerless.
That's the only dynamic that really, really matters. And people want to sit there at amongst the powerless and fight amongst ourselves.
We don't have time for that, Ish, and I hope you don't either.
I absolutely not. But Marianne Williamson is strong. Oh man, I love listening to her. I follow her on Twitter. She is great. I mean, she embodies a lot of what we've been. Yeah.
I think that, listen, I would imagine that if she started getting like the Bernie team, if you will, like the top people from his team, basically coming over to her. And
not Jeff Weaver.
No, I'm talking about people that actually know what they're doing.
Okay.
Like the top
Just want you to
Bernie, like if the top organizer for Bernie in Nevada said, I want to support you for president in 2024. I think that there may be a real chance that she's going to go for it. And that
I just think I like the movement.
Yeah, I do too.
I like the forward movement.
And we love Nina. And I think that there's, we know who the people are. Andrew Yang. We don't have to agree with Andrew on 100 things, but Andrew, the last time he was on our podcast, he said it best. The problem with the progressive left is they can agree with me on 20 issues, but if they disagree with me on the 21st, that's it, I'm finished. And that's got to die. Like that's got to die.
You know what I think the biggest problem is how we view leadership. We talked about this like in the very beginning, like how we view leadership. So we want to elect somebody that we agree with them all the time. We want to hang out with them. They're really nice. We have to like them. They have to make us feel good. And all of these things that are actually really irrelevant, right? And yet what we really need to be thinking about is this person reasonable? Is this person going to make sound judgments? Is this person going to surround themselves with really intelligent people and read the information that scientists provide and people who have expertise? And are they going to make sound judgments for the right reasons? And that's what matters. I don't have to agree with somebody on all that's irrelevant. First of all, They don't get into office and be authoritarian. I've said it a million times to you people. Andrew Yang would not become president and all of a sudden saying, it's this way or no way. And it's my thing on every one of these issues. That's just not how this works. How it works is he's a very smart and reasonable person with good judgment and would surround himself with really smart people and would be representing by not representing corporations, right? So people are putting too much, I think we're not looking at the right things of leaders. That's what I think.
Osiris, let us leave you with this. When Jen ran for Congress, there was no group, and I mean no group, that was more active, hardworking, and effective than the Yang Gang on behalf of Jen. Yeah. Nobody. They put in the work, and they knew what they were doing, which was even more impressive in terms of this movement that is a splice, in my opinion, of progressivism and libertarianism.
Yeah.
And we need more of that.
I always think about, I go back to the first conversation I had with Andrew when he called before he endorsed me and we had this conversation. And it was real, first of all, he's younger than me. So it's kind of just all very interesting. So we were just like, chatting, and it's like, we both are very reasonable. And we both have this thought, like, we want to do the best that we can to help the most amount of people and use our platform in a way to promote that as best we can. That's it. That's the thing. And so for me, and that's one of the reasons that he and I get along and he liked me, we don't have to agree on everything. I don't have to, because I would still elect him any day, because he's not on some tyrannical mission to take over. He actually wants to just use common sense and reason and sort of put in smart policies. And why don't people get this?
And to think
this is what's so frustrating
to think that there are millions of voters out there who think that somebody like Pete Buttigieg would be a better option than Andrew Yang shows that as far as we've come, we still got a long way to go.
Because he's a true blue. He's Team Clinton. People, anybody watching this sees that.
Can we agree that we must end Clintonism? Can we agree?
Oh, absolutely. I think that if you want to unite everyone, we will unite behind that.
On that note, how can people find you?
Yes.
What you're working on? We would love to have you back, have another conversation down the road.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. With YouTube, it's the censorship is really crazy. So I don't know. Hopefully I'll be around, but I'm also on locals.
But here's the thing. There's multiple Stuck in the Middle podcasts. And when I looked it up, it wasn't easy. And I had to message him and say, which one is it? So is there a way that you can direct? Because guys, the one that's Osiris, it's his face is on the thumbnail. His face is the thumbnail. No, because there's a few of them, if you just did it, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good. So what you can do is if you do a search in YouTube for Stuck in the Mid, so STUCKNDAMID, you'll see some of my videos pop up that way, but you can reach me at locals as well. Stuck in the Mid .locals.com.
Let me get this one more time. Stuck, and then the letter N, and then DA, and then MID.
Yes,
okay.
Perfect.
Wow. People think that.
Okay, so guys, just make sure you get the right Stuck in the Middle. And great Steelers Wheel song, by the way.
Yes,
it's a great. Yeah, it's a great.
Well, I contemplated whether we should have played that as like an intro song coming in.
No, it's probably like
we got a flag.
He's probably like I've never heard that before.
Well, we always like to play up our dorkiness every once in a while.
No, you are a dork.
Fair enough.
I'm cool.
Yeah, well. On that note, it has been a wonderful conversation. Guys, check them out. Stuck in the Middle, Stuck in the Mid.
Don't.
Mm-hmm.
You were about to break out in a song.
He was. I saw it.
I know. Do you ski?
No, I've only been skiing once.
Okay, so I went to Boulder from Florida. There were only a couple people from my high school that went there. So there's very few out-of-state people, at least back then. It wasn't like that. And most of the people there were either there as athletes to play, or they were people that went there to ski, like the out-of-state people that wasn't their state school. And then there was me. I did go there to ski. I never got into going. I can ski, but the idea of standing on sticks and going downhill just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I like kayaking and hiking.
Yeah.
And those are two things that you
I don't get the skiing thing.
Well, if you're going to do it anywhere in the country, doing it in Colorado is one of the best places.
That's why I have to ask, because it is a perk for
Mhm.
people that ski to live. I mean, it is.
Well, when I attempted to ski once, I did it in Vermont, and that was not smart because I was
can't
skiing.
even
That was skiing on
imagine
ice, and
skiing.
I
Oh
hurt.
my God.
It hurt a lot,
Wow.
and that was when I was young.
Mhm.
But with that said,
Thanks,
Osiris,
Osiris.
it's been a real pleasure.
Thanks.
We'll definitely be catching up with you. Maybe do a panel of some kind.
We could do all sorts of fun stuff. We're uniting independent media.
Absolutely, man.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great evening, my friend.
Bye.
Bye. Take
Bye.
care.
So, needless to say, our conversations just seem to get better and better because I think
I think that casual goats might be Declan. I'm not entirely sure.
maybe not. I don't know. What I do know is that
We're too blue pilled. I'm really not, though. I'm really not. I just, it's frustrating when the people that want the outside plan, they don't understand that there is an inside, whether they like it or not. Come on, that's a funny picture I found. I'm very pleased with this whole thing.
come on, man.
I'm very pleased.
So we've got one more.
We've got some good news today.
Yeah, we've got one more. Well, we'll start with the bad news, which of course is a quartet of the four richest men.
No, I just use them as the picture. That's not the article.
Well, they are the four richest men.
Well, no, there's other people from other countries.
That's true too. Well, the four richest Americans. So, along with the only one you're forgetting is
all right, here's the story.
Is freaking
No, that's just the picture I used.
Buffett.
Whatever.
But wealth of world's 10 richest men doubled in pandemic. Who would have thought?
So Oxfam, the anti-poverty charity, did some research, and the world's 10 richest men doubled their fortunes during the COVID-19 pandemic as poverty and inequality soared. This was a new study out on Monday from Oxfam. The charity, which is focused on combating global poverty, said the 10 wealthiest men's fortunes skyrocketed collectively from 700 billion to 1.5 trillion at a rate of around 1.3 billion per day. So it's over 160 million people are projected to have been pushed into poverty during that same period of time.
I think it's ironic that you make Bezos look like he's from South Park, which,
they're all ridiculous. But so this is
Musk
not,
is a
and
French
I want to quote this.
Mark Zuckerberg is definitely the court jester.
Oh, he's an idiot.
And
Musk thinks he's so sophisticated.
And Gates is he pretends he's dumb like Chaplin, even though I guess that's kind of like the whole point of the get.
I want to just say this quote from the Oxfam study because I think it's really interesting, and it's by the paper's author, so it's not one particular person that's named. Sure. It says, "This is not by chance but choice. Economic violence is perpetrated when structural policy choices are made for the richest and most powerful people. This causes direct harm to us all and to the poorest people, women and girls, and racialized groups most." This is the problem. These people are part of the problem. If you support these people and like them and think they're cool and want to be them, you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really what I wanted to say. But then I have a good segue. And despite them pillaging all that money over the past 2 years for themselves.
U.S. Army offering largest recruitment bonus ever for new recruits. Now, look, there are benefits to going into the armed services. There's no question that there is.
Do you like my comment?
Good to see there's still some money for our federal jobs program.
That's our federal jobs program, people. It's the military. But I've been noticing recruitment videos out the yin-yang lately.
That's because people really don't want to go in anymore. And why would they, when so much of it is this distrust in the fact that we spend so much money on the military, but yet our servicemen and women never get treated properly. In fact, they get treated horribly. It is a jobs program for the defense contracting industry, the military,
right? That preys on the poor and vulnerable communities. Correct. That this is their only option out.
Yep.
And so and by the way, the war hawkiness of it all, like we're gearing up for war with China kind of thing, like they're really pushing it. So this is the U.S. Army is giving up to $50,000 to qualified individuals who sign on for a 6-year active duty enlistment. 6 years. It's a combination of incentives that would get a recruit to the $50,000 maximum. This is before now enlistment incentives for full-time soldiers could not exceed $40,000. So they've raised it to $50,000. So it's really, can't you think of other ways that these people could be put to better use than the War Department?
Well, of course there are better ways, but it's not profitable to do that. And so again,
recruitment is big right now, people. And that to me is a red flag.
Yeah.
And it's specifically a red flag that we're underneath the Biden administration who withdrew us from Afghanistan, and yet Army recruitment, I feel like I'm seeing it all the time.
The corporate media really, really, for whatever reason, they have their reasons, but corporate media really goes to great lengths to protect our current president. And I'm not saying that they should, because they did not protect Trump and just shouldn't be protected at all. You're the leader of the free world. Scrutiny comes with the job times a billion. But in the case of Mr. I'm already in bed, this is a very big problem, because when there is an opportunity to make a statement, we've been saying that the most mask off moment right now was when Nancy Pelosi said, "Oh, there's no problem with insider trading." It's like, how much worse can it get? Well, I'll tell you how much worse it can get. Biden avoids wading into the congressional stock trading debate.
So apparently, this isn't an issue worthy of him getting involved in. He can't quite pick a side. Am I on the side of complete corruption and filth, or am I not? He can't quite decide, people. He's not sure. So he's just going to abstain from any sort of involvement in the corruption discussion. I find that so fitting. I'm not remotely surprised, but
come on, man. I don't want to do this anymore.
And of course, he's putting it under the guise of, I'm going to let the members of Congress decide what's best. We're not saying you have the choice to make, Joe. We're just wanting to know what you think about it. Like, have a stand. Take a stand, Joe.
Here are the facts, Jack. I don't really want to deal with this anymore.
I know.
This job's too hard.
I know.
I'm already going to bed. Good night.
It's not good.
Yeah, it's not good. And if you think that's not good, the U.S. has a new plan to confront its wildlife crisis.
Wait, no, I just want to say, last year alone, a total of 54 members violated the Stock Act rules.
And do you know who one of those 54 members
I'm sure you'd be
were?
shocked to know it was my congressional representative.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
You can't make this up. I feel bad for Martha Stewart whenever we talk about this. I'm like, they made Martha go to prison.
Considering how far it's gone since then.
I know. Now you have literally the Speaker of the House, the most powerful female politician in the country who people admire and look up to, at least some people do, saying that insider trading.
There was an article.
It's all right. We all do it.
There was an article on either Business Insider or Forbes. I remember when this came out. And Debbie was considered like one of the 3 or 4 most egregious of the ones who violated this act. So nothing is surprising anymore. It's just not. And when everything, it's just, you got it, brother. It's just my 401k. Hey, Debbie, if that's the best excuse you could come up with, I mean, I guess you could say there's worse.
Well, the other thing is what they do, and this is the case I know with her and with Nancy Pelosi, is it's their husbands. So
everything's in a shell company.
Exactly. So they could say, well, it's not in my name. That's not my money. But if your information is benefiting your lifestyle via the person you lived with's bank account, it's your problem. Like, that's your insider trading. It's so gross. It's so blatant. And they're so entitled and arrogant. Like, she puts that out there. Yeah, we do it. So what? Like,
what do you care?
Are you kidding me, lady? Like, people, we've got to get these people under control. These are our employees.
Eventually, people are going to snap.
Oh my God.
That's what's going to happen, because we're getting close to that.
It's so infuriating.
So
I would love for somebody like her to say something like that to me, or somebody in my, like, I cannot imagine not cracking up in their face. Like, if Debbie, that time she said, I'm Debbie and I always get what I want. I would love for somebody to say something so entitled like that to me that gets deferred to all the time.
Well, listen, even though we really wouldn't, no one looks forward to wanting to run for Congress in a race like this, because if you think it's bad in a lot of places, it is not. There really isn't any place that could be any worse than it is.
It's so
here.
brutal. People.
But what I will say is that if Jen were to run again in 24, Debbie really is giving her a lot of ammunition. But then again, she is the gift that keeps on giving. And so last but not least, the U.S. has a new plan to confront its wildfire crisis. How are
Yeah.
we going to do that?
Well, in a shift from old school firefighting strategies that attempted to stamp out naturally occurring blazes, the USDA and Forest Service will focus on thinning out forests to minimize megafires. The agency has released a 10-year strategy. Good luck if you make it to 10 years. But anyway, the agency has released a 10-year strategy today that includes removing trees and using controlled burns to reduce the amount of vegetation that feeds flames. The plan is to treat up to 20 million more acres of national forest and land that is currently managed. So they basically expanded the protection zone of controlling the fires.
Yeah.
They're going on the offense. Basically, it's a sign of a recognition that there needs to be needs to be on the offense because it's going to happen.
Right.
Like it's almost like we're seeing an admission that, yeah, we've got a fire problem here. We need to do that. You know, we need to have it in control. And it's scary to me anyway.
We better do something quick because when we're talking about the environment, we are talking about the perfect segue into next Monday's show, which is going to be friend of the show returning and the inspiration for Leonardo DiCaprio's character in Don't Look Up.
I'm so using that for thumbnails and for my graphic. I don't care.
Michael E. Mann is coming back to Generational Change. And of course, going to talk about the impact that the movie is having, because we are at a crisis point with the environment. I know people think, well, I don't see the sky on fire outside. Well, do you want to get to the point where the sky is on fire outside? Because I don't.
They're waiting till we have water rations to believe me. But, you know, when I talk about this, a lot of people treat me like I'm Chicken Little, like I'm like this crazy person.
Oh, no,
that's saying,
it's
I'm
serious.
Like, we're going, and I'm speaking on behalf of South Florida. I cannot address other places. We are going to run out of fresh water. I feel like the Jennifer Lawrence character. We're all going to die.
Hi, people.
No, but we are going to end up with water restrictions, and there is going to be encroachment. Gradual rising salt water is encroaching into our freshwater aquifer, which will inevitably, which by the way, can't be replenished. Like it's not like we could just add, like take out a hose and fill it up. You know what I mean? Like, so, you know, when that happens, we'll be on water restrictions. And yet all they do is keep building and building and building. And so, you know what? I've really gotten to the point where I'm getting to where I want to propose a moratorium on non-essential building. We have enough housing for everybody. We need to just let them live there for affordable prices and then fill the buildings that we have, tear down the ones that are going to end up dying because of saltwater intrusion, and like start, you know, housing people that need to be housed. And then stop building all these big developments.
That's also becoming an issue apparently with real estate now down here.
What?
That they're having a hard time with the places by the water. And
Good.
Yeah.
Good. They're going to all be abandoned buildings at some point that nobody can afford. And in my
because
lifetime,
they're not going to be able to be insured.
No, I keep saying this, in my lifetime, people, which I'm 50. So, you know, and granted, I don't think I'm ever going to be an old person, but in my lifetime, we will see the last buyers of some of these properties, where these properties will not be able to change hands again, and people will never be able to sell them because the properties will have no value, because one will be on, they won't have access to fresh drinking water, and two, they're not going to be able to afford to do the repairs to the infrastructure necessary to keep it from washing into the ocean. So we are going to get to that point. Like you said, you're not going to be able to get insurance. I don't understand how, and I don't think that you can even get a 30-year mortgage anymore in some places down there. I'm just saying, people, it's not the time to be investing in real estate here. And the people that think it is, I don't know what to tell you.
So the lesson is, we need to get serious, and we'll get serious with Michael E. Mann on Monday. Do
we have a candidate?
I don't think so. Not
we'll
for
have
Monday
somebody.
as of yet. But Senator Annette Taddeo, State Senator Annette Taddeo, who is running for governor of Florida, she is going to be our candidate guest on the last day of the month, on the 31st. That will be fun.
You're skipping over Wednesday the 26th.
Wednesday the 26th, we also have an amazing candidate, Marcel Dixon, who is running against none other than Jim Clyburn. So
that pleases me to no end.
And if you thought that was a big deal, the other big deal is we are having Mr. Entrepreneur and encourager of the living wage himself, Joe Sandberg.
Very exciting.
So this is it's going to be a big week.
Yeah, we have a lot of good stuff coming up.
A lot of big stuff.
And in February, we're going to start doing panels. I think we need to do our first candidate panel will be for Texas. I already have spoken to Donna, and it'll be easy enough to get Jasmine. She's, a friend of the show.
I want to get one other person.
Well, I do, but we're going to need to have some names before that other person will sign on. Otherwise she big leagues us. You know who I'm talking about.
At the very bottom of the
yes.
state? Okay. So we'll see what happens.
Stupid.
But with that said, we appreciate you guys, and we will be seeing you on Monday.
Bye, all.